I have watched an extensive number of kung fu movies, so I feel like I have a pretty good grounding in Chinese history.
I guess they're just not so smart.
All right, PC Master Race, baby. Welcome to the club. Welcome
It's
aboard.
about time. I didn't want to. Like I said, I'm without a computer as of late.
What have you been up to this week? Doing all right?
Helping mom move. It's already becoming a fucking nightmare.
Really? Moving sucks, dude.
Yeah, especially when you're moving with somebody that's helping someone move that is like has no concept of organization or prioritization, and you keep trying to explain to her like moving out of her old place, and I was like, hey, you can stop vacuuming the floors while we're moving because I'm going to walk out with my boots on and I'm going to walk right back in to get more furniture, and this is going to keep happening for the next 2 days, and you keep wanting to clean up and instead of helping us. So
if I helped my mom move, she would just yell at me about politics the entire time.
I wish that's what it was about. Yeah. Tell me about the Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum.
Buddy.
At least that's fun. It's interesting.
Let's see what's been going on in the world, shall we?
Susan Sarandon! Oh, thank God! We have to stop the ceremony. Kim Jong-il is mad. Here, let me loose. I'll show you where the theater is.
All right.
No, Chris, stay away from her.
Fuck you, she wants to help us.
No, Chris. She's acting. I am not. The others tied me up because I wouldn't go along with their plans. Your skills are fading with age, Miss Sarandon.
You shall die a peasant's death!
Jesus, titty fucking Christ, I could have sworn she was telling the truth.
Oh my God.
How great was that movie?
It was so good. I sing the praises of that movie to everyone.
So this, of course, is in reference to Amber Heard testifying. Gory testimony by her.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty detailed stories. Do you have an opinion about this going into it, or?
I was already sold on Amber Heard bad before I heard anything she said. So
let's play the clip here. Let's show what we're talking about in case anybody in the world hasn't seen this by now. But pretty convincing, man.
I felt this pressure. He owned my pubic bone, and he thought he was punching me. I just saw his arm. I could feel his arm moving, and it looked like he was punching me. But I could just feel this pressure.
Are you convinced yet?
No. Women
Really?
are crazy. This is. I just started rewatching Game of Thrones with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
Cersei, I think it was in season 2. She says, "Tears are a woman's weapon. Learn how to use them well." Telling Sansa.
That's pretty good, man. It'd be hard to make up a story that compelling and tell it in front of the jury and everybody. You're under oath. I mean, perjury is on the line here.
Yeah. I've come up with some really good stories to tell doctors to get them prescribe me pain meds and Xanax. I feel like I can act to that level.
Yeah, but this has higher stakes, don't you think? She's potentially... I mean, that's...
I was going through withdrawals. That's pretty high stakes.
Fair enough. Yeah, the comments on this video are brutal. Most people seem to agree with you, man. The top comment, "She is truly a sick individual, truly delusional in her lies. She needs jail time for this performance." I don't know. It's just his word against hers, man. It's impossible to know who's telling the truth or who's lying.
I don't know. I mean, has she had any corroborating evidence? Or he kind of has. He's had a lot of people basically back up what he's saying along the way. You know, he's
Bunch of
got
sycophants.
videotape. Yeah, I definitely am a Johnny Depp sycophant.
That's not nearly as interesting as what actually caught the headlines this past week. This is pretty insane. Amber Heard doing a bump of coke on the stand. Pretty ballsy.
Yeah, so I guess
mental condition.
It doesn't. It's still hearsay, Your Honor.
This could be a trick of the camera, a trick of the light, but man, look at the tip of her nose.
Mental condition.
You can see the coke on the tip of her nose, dude.
it really does. So I didn't catch that before. I watched this a few times. It really does look like she's sneaking a bump of coke.
No, dude.
That's
exactly how I would do it.
A couple times. A lot of times you see crap like this, and it's put up by somebody that's
It's
never
bullshit,
had to sneak that's never snuck a bump of coke, and that's what it looks like.
That's legit, bro. That's exactly how I would do it.
Exactly how.
I can just imagine the motion of exactly what she did and how. Yeah, it would go down exactly that way.
You got something hidden. I'm assuming it's hidden inside the napkin.
It's in her
tissue.
fingernail, I believe.
Oh, you think it's in her fingernail? I thought she had something like wrapped up and was
Here's
kind
the
of
thing about
palming
this.
it in the tissue, and like a bullet, one of those bullets.
It could be. Yeah, it could be. For sure. Either way, nobody blows their nose and does that with their pinky like that, with that motion. Yeah. That combination of finger movements was not consistent with what I would consider to be blowing the nose whatsoever.
And then the facial movements afterward.
Oh yeah,
you know,
it's very reminiscent of the olden days. Ah, shit.
All she had to do was start gagging, about ready to throw up. A little bit too much. We needed a close up on her pupils to see, how big.
Oh, she's an OG, man. She's not gonna. She's probably been doing coke all day. Hell.
Yeah,
that was a hell of a performance. So my argument is that actors shouldn't be allowed to testify in court because professionally, this is what they do. They lie for a living, basically.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about this proposal?
Yeah, no, I'm with it. It's
because if that was acting, that was fairly convincing. Like that would convince most people.
Sure. Yeah, it would. It's I don't know. How would you? How do you deal with this? Where do we go? You already sold me on the plan.
Oh, you don't even know what the plan of action is. You're just down with the principle of it.
I'm down with the principle that I think juries in particular. I mean, this is something I've kind of talked about in other contexts. People aren't trained to detect deception very well. We're really bad at picking up on these things, and especially if the person's trained in deceiving people, which is that's what acting is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it could potentially lead to some pretty weird outcomes, as Johnny Depp may or may not find out.
Well, here's what you do. You get somebody who looks like them to come in and play the part of, for example, Amber Heard, get a female person in here who is not trained in acting, and have an earpiece and just relay the answers back and forth between the lawyers and the defendant or the witness.
I like it.
Yeah.
Because, you're still having them speak, but you're taking out the charisma and the emotional. I think that's the big thing would be the emotional connection that they're trying to get with the jury box. Yeah, I guess that works. They're still getting to speak their part. They're just doing it through somebody else. And you're just, somebody like Johnny Depp, obviously he's very charismatic. Somebody like her, she's making a very strong appeal to emotion. Just get that out. We just want to know the facts. Or your version of the facts, I guess.
Well, in today's culture, who knows what would happen if that were the case in this particular trial? I mean, without the charisma of Johnny Depp to sell his side of the story,
Yeah, well, it already. I was reading up on this a little bit. It already didn't work. I guess they had basically the same trial in England a few years ago, and he lost it.
Oh, really?
And and apparently, England's standards of evidence for civil cases like this are slightly higher to hit than the U.S. So the assumption is if he lost over there, more than likely he's going to lose here too.
Oh, you must have added this link.
Just along the actors acting on.
What was he testifying for?
His
Marlon Brando.
Yeah, his son killed somebody.
Oh, and he had information about it, or he's testifying as a character witness here?
I think no, he was there when it happened. It was apparently, I think it was at Marlon Brando's house, and his son lived there. and killed his daughter's boyfriend at the house. I remember this being a thing in the news at the time, and people have kind of talked about it. He gets...
Where Dag was, and I'm not lying. I swear to Christ, took his life and his soul.
Ooh.
I saw Dag lying there. And I tried to get hold of myself. And,
Marlon Brando's such a pimp.
Get the fuck out of here. He's not allowed to testify in court, dude. Come on, Marlon Brando. Give me a break. No way, dude. Better take everything he says in court with a huge grain of salt because...
Yeah, he certainly has. They show some full body pics at certain points, and the dude's like 350 pounds. He's so fucking fat.
Well, he's rich and happy. What do you expect?
Oh, he is. He is. Respect Marlon Brando.
Willem Dafoe. I'm surprised how good Willem Dafoe has gotten since he's gotten older, man. I hated him after Spider-Man, and then after watching Lighthouse, I'm like, holy shit. He has got chops, man.
Really? I have been hearing a lot of... I like... Occasionally I'll listen to these movie review channels on YouTube, and everybody's been raving about The Lighthouse. And I've really been wanting to see it.
I've only seen it once, and I really want to watch it again because it's... And there's certain things that are hard to pick up on because it's a period piece, but man, it's awesome. It is awesome.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, I guess the guy that did that just released that movie, The Northman, that just come out, and it's supposed to be like a really... Oh, it's supposed to be really good. It's supposed to be like really different. You know, it's like a Viking era thing, but it's not like what you would think it would be like, I guess.
Well, that director did The Witch and what was the other one? Oh, Midsommar. Also
okay, I've
good.
heard about that one too. Yeah, I haven't seen any of those.
That was touted as being a horror movie set in broad daylight, which was pretty unique at the time.
Okay, I think I've seen like the trailers for it, but I didn't actually watch it.
It's very good, and it's based on historical facts, which is what I enjoy about his work.
Well, definitely interested in checking out The Lighthouse.
But that's not what we're here to talk about. I love going on random tangents. Sorry about that. So we're going to talk a little bit about Biden's Ministry of Truth, Disinformation. What's the official name of it? I don't even remember.
Disinformation Governance Board. It
There
is
you
a acting board set up within the Department of Homeland Security to monitor, what is the exact thing that they're supposed to do? It's like monitor disinformation from Russia and Mexicans, I believe is what they said, which just seemed kind of weird.
What Psaki Bombs or whoever was talking about it, I don't remember now, was basically making the argument that this was supposed to aid in protecting free speech on big tech platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Like their role is not going to be to censor people. They're going to be, I guess, regulating, or they don't even have any regulatory power as far as I understand it. They just provide oversight.
Yeah. So the board's function, this is from Wikipedia. The board's function is to protect national security by disseminating guidance to DHS agencies on combating foreign misinformation and disinformation. Specific problem areas mentioned by the DHS include human smugglers encouraging migrants to surge to the Mexico-United States border, as well as Russian state disinformation. Russians and Mexicans. Thought that was a joke. It was not.
That is the sum total of U.S. foreign policy, folks.
Yeah. Yeah, so this was actually footage they released of how they're going to be operating the Disinformation Governance Board. I don't know if you'd seen this before or not, but...
I haven't seen this film, no. I've read the book, of course, but...
This is not a film. This was taken a week ago at DHS.
You see, if we had all these little screens in everybody's house, then we would know what happened.
Biden. Yeah, that's Biden when he was younger, watching us all.
We would know what happened with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, like what the real truth is, you know?
Yeah.
This would solve a lot of problems.
Just give them absolute authority and take away all privacy, and then we'll be able to get all the criminals.
Privacy's overrated.
That's what happened with the Patriot Act, right? Like, we just gave up all our civil liberties, and then all the bad people went away, along with anybody complaining about Bush.
I don't like the idea of seeing the book in this way. I think it stands on its own, man.
decided to pursue, which is a disinformation czar at the Department of Homeland Security. Now, that's concerning on its own, that the government is involved in determining what is and isn't disinformation, because, of course, they have their own biases and their own beliefs and their own agenda, and they're not objective, they're not neutral, they're not balanced. They are effectively operating as the Ministry of Truth. Again, it's at the Department of Homeland Security. Now, the person who was picked for this position is also incredibly biased, and she has her own blind spots. I mean, she apparently was tweeting about how the Hunter Biden laptop thing was Russian disinformation and that it was a good thing that it was censored on Twitter and various social media outlets. Well, now we know from verification from the New York Times, including others, that it wasn't Russian disinformation. If that was really his laptop and those were really the emails. Now, I'm not interested.
Yeah, so I think this is kind of what the brunt of everyone's argument against this organization comes down to is who are the people that are determining what is misinformation and what are they going to consider misinformation. I think things like this are why people are distrustful of government. It's a good idea if you have like this group of enlightened intellectuals without any outside attachments or political leanings, that just sit around in their spare time debating Nietzsche and Aristotle. My understanding is Nina Jankowicz is who is the person picked by Biden to head this organization. She is not this kind of person. Yeah, a couple key things I'd be interested. I would like to see what it is that they define as misinformation. Define the severity of the disinformation that you would need to take action on. Is it purely for departmental purposes, or will policy and legislation end up being derived from the pronouncements made by this governance board downstream? Alejandro Mayorkas stated that the board would have no operational authority or capability, but would collect best practices for dissemination to DHS organizations already tasked with defending disinformation threats, and asserted the board would not monitor American citizens. So they don't have operational authority or capability, but the DHS does. Will their advice be going to groups with operational authority to act on? I think they are already to a certain degree. So it was the day after this was announced, Mint Press News and Consortium News were shut down and had their PayPal accounts frozen.
See, they're getting to you already. You should have been talking shit about the Truth Board.
God damn it. Will their advice be going to groups with operational authority to act on? I think they are. Mint Press News and Consortium News were shut down and had their PayPal accounts shut off the day after the announcement.
Is that related to this, though? This isn't even active yet, is it?
No, it was something that was pointed out by several people. I think Kyle talks about it in this clip.
Yeah.
Some other people that brought it up. I went to the sites, and they were Consortium had like published pieces from Aaron Mate, Mint Press News, had a lot of. They're described as far left news organizations, and they definitely had a lot of, sympathetic.
It's Jimmy Dore shit, right? It's Aaron Mate, Jimmy Dore shit.
Yeah, Aaron Mate, not Jimmy Dore, but yeah, it's shit for sure. It's definitely shit. It's not that I like these people, but it's just concerning if that's what happened, and maybe this is what could possibly happen. I don't know. It's really concerning about who these people are. Are they acting in our best interest? What kind of checks and balances are going to be placed on a group like this? And that's kind of where I have my my worries.
I was just going through Nina Jankowicz's thread here that you linked.
Yeah,
this is some pretty poisonous liberal shit, dude. It doesn't seem like this has anything to do with what this governance board is going to be doing, though. They're going to be going after Russian
and Mexicans. Yeah, no, it doesn't. But
and this is related to the DHS, so that seems pretty reasonable.
So if you go to the DHS, the Disinformation Governance Board website, they link this one article in particular as kind of being their starting point or their mission statement for the Disinformation Governance Board. It was an article called "Combating Targeted Disinformation Campaigns: A Whole of Society Issue." This is written in 2019 by the Public-Private Analytic Exchange Program. So in that, they recommend support for government legislation promoting transparency and authenticity of online political content. This is like, we support the passage of the Honest Ads Act, which would hold digital political advertising, funding and support of research efforts that bridge the commercial and academic sectors, academic research efforts armed with appropriate real-world data, establishment of information sharing and analysis organization to bring together government entities, research institutions, and private sector platforms. The organization could facilitate information exchange from a trusted third party. Encouragement of media organizations to promote the need for healthy skepticism by their users when consuming online content. This includes providing media literacy resources to users and expansion of media literacy programs to build societal resilience in the face of disinformation campaigns. Media literacy could be framed as a patriotic choice in defense of democracy. Public education through advocacy groups like AARP, blah, 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 which you can do. So, yeah, my concern is kind of how you implement these suggestions without the encroachment of dishonest actors or people looking to make a buck. Speaking of people wanting to make a buck, so this was written by the Public Analytic Exchange Program. And like I said, this is on their website. They are touting this as kind of the mission statement, what they're working on, or what they are hoping to achieve is to kind of enact the suggestions in this paper. So I wanted to kind of do a little digging, look in to see who these guys are, this Public-Private Analytical Information Exchange. So when you go to that, and you have to do a little bit of searching, and at the bottom it shows you who are all the people that are parts of this program. The first one that I found was the Business Executives for National Security. This is an American nonpartisan nonprofit with prominent members such as Jeff Bezos. Founded by a mining executive. This was founded by a mining executive in 1982 for senior business leaders to give advice and lend expertise on how national security agencies can become more efficient. BENS is the acronym for the group. BENS' early work focused extensively on initiatives aimed at U.S.-Soviet threat reduction and inefficiencies within support functions of the Department of Defense. This is kind of the maintenance of construction. Or they were mostly doing like maintenance and construction of military housing. The organization was also active in BRAC, championing the process and helping develop transition plans for locations affected by base closure. So I don't know really what they would have to, why this organization is involved in determining what disinformation is, but there you go. So, the guys really do it all. They got a bunch of billionaires telling government where to get good deals on drywall and how to renovate the Radcliffe Theater when the Armored Division pulled out, and now they're helping us address Facebook bots. The other group that is behind this is the Chamber of Commerce National Security Task Force. I'm sure these guys are on the job. I'm imagining a bunch of hedge fund managers and industry titans wearing cowboy hats and horses. This guy's task force is going to bring some much needed national security to us. From their website, this group advocates on behalf of the Chamber's members who have a direct stake in homeland and national security issues. Through its National Security Task Force and working groups, the department works with Congress, the administration, and international governments and institutions to provide a competitive and secure global trade environment, strong private sector, blah, blah, blah. So the point is, the point that I'm bringing up is this is the group that is giving the intelligence to the government agency. This is where they're going to be getting all their intelligence. It's from this group in particular, who are funded by all these different, basically industry groups.
This is probably like a data firm or something. They just collect every piece of data and just give it to the government.
Maybe. I don't particularly know, but so I was like kind of reading through this, and I'm just imagining all the horrible ways that this could be abused. This basically just opened up a platform for potentially for different industry groups and corporations in the U.S. to kind of funnel what maybe they think would be disinformation to the DHS to act on. Like I said, this is just speculation, but you just kind of imagine a scenario where like Venezuela finds a cheaper way to process crude oil. They're deemed to have ties to radical communist extremists by the business community that doesn't want to have to compete, and technologies like this are kept in the dark for years when they could be could be potentially revolutionary ideas.
Now, when they do something like that, they believe in the free market, Tony.
Yeah. Also, like when you read into it, it really looks like certainly these are all just data gathering organizations and kind of data dissemination organizations, but they're really, I don't know, I smell a giant corporate handout in all this. That basically all these guys are just making up, they're making up their own expertise in these areas so that they can get giant contracts from the government. So
probably right there.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's money to be made. Anytime you're expanding government, somebody's benefiting because they're not going to make everything public. They're going to privatize part of this, obviously.
Yeah.
But like I was talking about earlier, this is a problem with capitalism. I mean, the problem is we can't. So, for example, Russia, in the Russian case, we can't label Russia terrorists and just block them automatically, which is what we do with, brown people in the Middle East. So this is another way to censor them out. This is essentially what Russian media does. They're not going to let American journalists come on Russian TV, but Russia can just buy ads on Facebook if they want to. Hell, anybody can. That's capitalism for you. You know what I mean? There's no control over the media landscape aside from money, obviously. And that's supposed to be the free press, is just the ability to own the press privately. Somehow that equates to a free press in this country. I mean, our public media, like for example, NPR gets railed for being publicly owned. Only 2% of NPR is publicly owned. It's publicly funded, yeah. Right? It's a sham. There is no public. Every other country has some sort of state media, including Russia.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think this is just it's a scenario where there's really no good options. I think that our option is kind of the way we do it here for the most part, is the least bad way to do it of all the bad ways that it could potentially be done. And this is obviously, it's just a slippery slope argument, but we see how these things go. You have, I don't know. I mean, yeah, what's the solution? You have people in control like Nina Jankowicz that's ultra woke and kind of Democratic Party affiliated, and you have stories like the Hunter Biden laptop, for example. This would be a perfect example where she would have initially called that disinformation, and it just wasn't. And I think that's kind of what scares people. I don't know. I mean, what's better is to have a lot of information out there, some of which is bad, or to have much less information out there and have to worry about someone potentially censoring information that's not bad, legit information.
Well, obviously you want the information out there. A free press is important, and the internet is very democratizing before it was, bought up by these major companies. That's the problem. Mm-hmm. It's owned by a few major companies, and they control the public discourse at this point. That's what's really at stake here. I mean, the press is what it is. You can always look at international press in the United States, but when it comes to social media, it's all right here in America, baby. Elon Musk and whoever else.
Yeah, I mean, they can crack down on that just as easily now. This isn't the Wild West days of the internet like it was in the early 2000s. Everybody's got a source of funding now, has a way to get money in, and all those can be shut down. Your platform could be taken down. You have your domain seized.
I have a great idea. I say we nationalize Twitter since Elon Musk just bought it. Sorry, buddy. We're taking that.
Yeah.
Power to the people. Nationalize Twitter. Make it completely open, no censorship whatsoever. And then the other companies like Facebook, you break up into the constituent parts and even break those up further, because the consolidation is really the major problem. It's not going to solve the problem if you break them up, but it could definitely flatten the curve, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we go on a public disinformation campaign just to get people to get off of social media altogether. Just stop using it in general.
This is kind of terrifying. If this is going to be anything like what people think it's going to be like. I mean, it's not like the government hasn't been collecting data for decades. I mean, that's what Edward Snowden is facing charges in the United States for. The feds are collecting all the data already.
Yeah, they definitely are. And I guess they're just trying to find another way to analyze it, and
they want to turn that into power. They want power.
Yeah. It's just going to be another tool to protect the establishment, really. I don't know. It's all conspiratorial, but I don't think it's outlandish to say that this is another tool that establishment forces can use to keep themselves, to keep the narrative where they want it to be at. You know, I mean, today it's Russia. Today it's closing down sites that have Aaron Mate on them. You know, as goofy as he is, but I don't know. It's kind of frightening as to where it could lead. And I don't think the allusions to 1984. I generally think that they're pretty unwarranted. I don't think so in this case.
Well,
not that it's full 1984, but I think it's
very, very poor optics. This was the worst possible move the Biden administration could make. This is so stupid. That was my initial thoughts. Like,
yeah,
anything that could be even loosely compared to 1984 in a negative way is not going to be great for the midterms.
and this just proves the point about the tone deafness of the people doing this. Like, you're supposed to be savvy internet users lurking and trying to spot disinformation from, you know, other governments, and you don't know the internet well enough to know that people are going to hear this, and you're going to have all sorts of QAnon conspiracies popping up. And
they have to.
Yeah.
This just lends more credence to the theory that the Democrats lose on purpose or don't care. They're just doing what they want to do, which is, you know, strengthen the Democratic Party and enrich themselves.
Yeah. Well, this is the world we live in.
Come on,
women should not be involved in government. They cannot be trusted.
The real reason she's angry is because no Chads would hit it and stick with it.
Those are just 2 of the thousands of abusive tweets I've received over the past couple of months. Unfortunately, for women in politics, journalism, academia, or basically any time when we express an opinion while female, that is not the exception. It's the norm. During the 2020 election, I led a research team that investigated the use of gendered abuse and disinformation to keep women out of public life. We tracked 13
I'm sure she's right about everything she's saying here, but it's just so gross.
Yeah, I, absolutely. I mean, you hear that crap all the time on Twitter, and it is gross, but I don't know what the DHS's role in that is. I mean,
she's referencing this.
That was from a while ago, and she calls it disinformation, you know, so is that going to go on a file somewhere as disinformation that we're not going to act on yet because we don't have the authority to yet? Am I going to get arrested for making misogynistic jokes, James? That's what I'm trying to get at here. That's what this is all about.
Why can't we just make this a public utility and stop? Just block people. I don't know. Is it too many people to block? Is that the problem?
Yeah, I don't know.
Are they so sensitive they just get butthurt if somebody insults them? I don't know, man.
That seems to be the issue.
The Democratic Party is they're really leaning into the liberal bullshit, man.
Yeah, it's like, what is the worst caricature that Ben Shapiro does of us? Let's do that.
The Democrats, the DNC and the GOP are like in a competition to see who can fuck the working class the hardest in this country, and
they're both winning.
Yeah, they're both going to win in the end, huh? They're both going to be on Mars with fucking Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. Let's talk about the immigration policy here. What do you have to say? What do you have to say about this?
Yeah, so the Beanie Boner continues tonight. I seen this clip recently where Tim Pool breaks down stories meant to scare your papaw. Go ahead and play it, James.
Following through on his plan, Governor Abbott of Texas has dropped off illegal immigrants in Washington, D.C. via bus. Previously, the governor said that because the Biden administration is taking immigrants by bus and dropping them off in Texas communities, he would take these people, put them on a bus, and send them to Washington, D.C. It's kind of like a, how do you...
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Mexicans are a punishment. If you get Mexicans,
we will send the Mexicans to lower your property values. Yeah, so I don't know. It's, the standard right-wing showpiece.
You smell like taco stands.
It's awful. God, man. I tell you, just as an aside, Mexicans are my favorite people. If I were to go anywhere, if I were ever to leave the country to live, it would definitely be Mexico or South America. It's such a great place. The people are so awesome. Yeah. The culture is so freaking amazing. The food, the fucking music, man. Could you imagine just sitting around eating tacos, listening to flamenco guitar all day? Just.
I could do without the music, but the rest of it.
Oh, I love flamenco. So this governor ships a bunch of migrants to Washington, D.C. to teach big bad Comrade Biden a lesson. I've heard this story kind of occasionally in the right-wing echo chamber about these buses full of immigrants being shipped around the country in the dead of night. Presumably, this is to bring chaos and mayhem to the local residents and to inexorably change the demographics such that the area will go blue and Biden, like Palpatine, will be given supreme executive authority for life and found the first continental empire.
Well,
We can go ahead. Play. Oh,
if they're shipping them to D.C., that's already a blue state, for one. For two, if they're illegal, they can't vote at all. And for three, they're not illegal immigrants. They're seeking asylum, I assume. I don't think they're like storming the border 140,000 strong. They'd probably fucking mow them down.
Yeah, well, we'll see about that, James. Play clip 2.
These conservatives get so confused when it comes to immigration. They don't even understand the basic concepts involved.
It's such an easy story. It's such, like I've said at the beginning, it's a story to scare your grandpa.
Yeah.
You know, he's stuck at home. He's retired. You know, unfortunately, his wife passed away a few years ago. So he just sits around all day getting angry and watching Sean Hannity. You know, this is where these stories kind of pop up and they filter out at some point or another to Ben Shapiro and Tim Pool.
I always assumed that Tim Pool's audience was younger.
You would think, but it sounds exactly like the crap that comes out of Sean Hannity's mouth.
That is true.
Maybe they're old souls. All Tim Pool's audience are just old souls.
On day one, I'm going to send a legislative immigration reform bill to Congress to provide a roadmap to citizenship for 11 million undocumented immigrants who contribute so much to this country, including 1.7 million AAPI. My immigration policy is built around keeping families together, modernizing the immigration system by keeping families, unification, and diversity as pillars of our immigration system, which it used to be. Ending Trump's cruel and inhumane policy at the border to rip children from their mother's arms. Take immediate action to protect dreamers, including the more than 100,000 eligible dreamers from East and South Asia. Rescinding the un-American Muslim ban immediately. Restoring refugee admission in line with the values and historic leadership of our country. Raising the target to a minimum of 125,000 people a year in my first year. He's cut it down to 15. The average has been 95,000 a year. Working with Congress to establish a bipartisan legislation to ensure a minimum admission of 95,000 refugees. That's who we are. That's how my great-great-grandfather...
Okay, that's good. Mostly the first part of this was just Joe's incoherent dissertation on how he wants to groom your children. After that, he stumbles... Well, we didn't listen to that part. He just rambles. And after that, he stumbles through the planks of the immigration policy on day one, mind you. First thing he talks about is the roadmap to citizenship. And also, I think like there's just so much confusion, like we were talking about a minute ago, about what the immigration policy actually is, about what these things entail. You know, this is kind of Tim Pool's whole stick. I mean, just the right wing's whole stick in general is disseminating all this, just disseminating bad information about this, conflating different parts of our immigration policies, pointing out its shortcomings in certain areas and acting as if that's the norm. Often you hear people like Tim Pool talking about how lax these policies are, how they're just kind of letting everybody in. It's an open, porous border. You have all these criminals and ne'er-do-wells coming to this country and just being handed out citizenship. So I looked into the actual policy, the roadmap, I guess, if you will, on how to achieve citizenship. It all seems pretty standard. But it's very thorough, it seems like, and it covers all of the kind of everything that everyone is scared that it doesn't cover. It seems to cover that. You know, for example, like you must be a person of good moral character. What they do mean by this is essentially they're looking at criminal record and honesty in the application process. You have to report all arrests or convictions. This means that even if you weren't found guilty, you can still have your citizenship tied up just from being charged with something. Lying about any of these things can get you disqualified from citizenship. There's a long list of potential blights on your moral character that must be reported and will essentially require you to hire a lawyer to argue your case. And there's this whole other list. If you've engaged in or engaging in what's called terrorist activity. A court has determined that you've violated a protection order. You are in deportation or removal proceedings or have a deportation order, past or present. You've helped someone enter illegally. It's if you've been a habitual drunkard or come to the U.S. to practice polygamy. Like it's a pretty exhaustive list that you kind of have to pass like every single little point to even be given the opportunity at this roadmap to citizenship. So this narrative that the right puts out that it's just letting everybody in, giving them cards and telling them to vote for Biden is just it's absolute nonsense.
Yeah, well, you have to speak the language. You have to like know the fucking national anthem. You have to be over a 40 BMI to even be considered an American anymore.
You have to do.
The waiting list is insane, dude. Like, that's all theoretical because it's theoretical because the waiting list is like 72 years or some shit.
Yeah, I think it's like 10, but either way, it's pretty extensive. And
well, not for asylum seekers. For if you apply from some other country, you're not going to get in unless you have a college degree, basically, and then you go on the list. But for asylum seekers, it's like it's impossible.
And that's kind of the point of this story is it's about asylum seekers. So it's about a couple of these different things, but also there's wanting to end child separation in Title 42. The U.S. has for a long time admitted refugees to our countries. It's kind of what the idea of America sprang from. I think there's a big statue or something in New York about give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. Not quite the same language as Trump's best and brightest, but the Statue of Liberty sounds like a Bernie bro. Title 42 was a provision enacted in the Public Health Service Act of 1944. Essentially, it provides emergency provisions for expulsion, not deportation, of individuals for public health concerns. The pretext Trump was using was that the CDC had in fact listed many Central and South American countries as COVID hotspots. So he was expelling these potentially infectious people to protect citizens.
Well, he wasn't expelling them. He was making them wait in Mexico for the asylum process, which they're not even fucking Mexican. They're just in some foreign country with no support.
Well, even the ones that would come here, they would immediately ship right back across the border. So these were the expulsions he was doing.
Right.
Okay. That's different. Yeah. And that's basically what he was doing with not even the asylum seekers, just people in general that were caught crossing the border for whatever reason, asylum seekers or not. He would just ship them right back over to Mexico, and said that there was that the areas were deemed by the CDC at the time to be COVID hotspots. So it was kind of it was definitely a discriminatory practice on his part.
COVID was fake.
It depends on what context we're talking.
Oh, let me just say really quick. There's this myth. I've had like 5 or 6 people on Twitter reply to me and say that they're not asylum seekers. They're illegal immigrants because you have to go through a legal port of entry to be considered an asylum seeker. That's not true. You just have to seek asylum. Typically, the asylum seeking process would take place at a port of entry, but it doesn't matter where you cross. If you get in the country in any sort of way, you're seeking asylum if you want to seek asylum.
Yeah, and a lot of this too, it's not.
There's a legal process in place. There's international law that governs this stuff. The United States is very strict when it comes to borders. They're way less strict than almost any other sort of Western nation. Way more strict, sorry.
Yeah, I think something else to point out, like when you hear about these things on right-wing media, they are complaining about some particular president's policy and acting as if the president doesn't have a lot of control over these things. These are laws that are enacted by Congress or international treaties that are developed between two nations. And, presidents have a little bit of wiggle room around there, but, there's not a substantial difference from one to the other. But it's this big talking point that gets picked up on by these different right-wing outlets every time there's a left-leaning president that, they've just completely done away with all immigration policies. We've got a porous border. They're just letting everybody in and giving them.
Well, that's their strategy. This is democratic centralism. They're using the Marxist-Leninist strategy of democratic centralism. Everybody on the right completely agrees on whatever the party line is, and they all stick with it. And if you don't stick with it, like Madison Cawthorn, you get fucked, buddy. You get fucked hard. You see what happened to him? Yeah, you stick to the party line.
No.
It's not Stalin's purge, but it's close.
Papa Mitch McConnell was not happy about what he said. So there's number of other legal issues surrounding this, essentially the discriminatory focus on immigrants and asylum seekers from Central and South American countries. They were COVID hotspots. If you recall, Trump referred to the virus as the China virus, and immigrants from China and other COVID hotspots did not face Title 42 expulsion. Also, incidentally, so far, Biden has expelled way more immigrants than Trump ever did. I think his first couple months, he was expelling 10 times the amount of immigrants that Trump was like in the first year of his presidency. So,
well, there's also the fact that the United States is the largest hotspot in the world. So really, immigrants would lower our COVID rate, you would think.
Yeah, just that is a good point. Yeah, and then kind of the last part of what he was talking about was restoring refugee admissions. Now to the scary part. Why in God's name are groups of illegals being bussed around the country? It seems really insane. When I first heard about it, I'll confess I thought it was either completely made up or something that happened once or twice and was completely blown out of proportion. It is an ongoing process, though. Often immigrants are bussed around different communities in Texas or elsewhere in the U.S., and it's caused a stir among communities. By and large, these are asylum seekers, about 80% of whom are family units that are seeking asylum. The other 20% are still asylum seekers, they're just individuals. These are people that are legally entering the U.S. under international asylum laws. So we talked about this earlier. This means that when you cross the border, they turn themselves into the nearest authority and announce their intention to seek asylum. Ideally, you would do this at a point of entry. Is you do not have to. All you have to do is announce yourself as soon as you can after you've entered the country. So yeah, incidentally, so this means that by definition, they are not illegal. It is legal under U.S. law and codified through numerous international treaties that people may seek asylum. Asylum laws are not a long drawn-out process, are not the same long drawn-out process that immigration law is. You can enter the country on foot without prior knowledge by the host country. It's just important you follow a certain set of protocols. Turn yourself in, get processed, and be given legal documentation from the host country. In the cases Tim is talking about, there are a disproportionate number of Haitians at this time, though the countries kind of change year to year depending on what's going on in the countries that the asylum seeker comes from. Once these people are processed at the border and their application is pending, they are allowed supervised access to the country. Think parole. If you fuck up or disappear, your application gets denied, and when you're found, you get kicked out. Because it would be completely unfeasible, as well as inhumane, to keep these people locked in a holding cell on the border while they are trying to get their asylum processed, they are either shipped to some sort of sponsor organization, many of which are in Texas, that will house them, or they are sent to a family member that has announced that they will watch them, they will house them while they're doing this. Yeah, like I said, this process has been likened to parole. You have to keep checking in through the whole time. We give people convicted of armed robbery and all sorts of offenses on parole every year and seem to have very little problem keeping an eye on them. This also kind of goes to the idea that, you know, once they get across the border, they just have to say they're seeking asylum and they can just kind of disappear. That's not how it works.
I don't even agree with characterization. We're all people. Like, I don't understand. It's this idea that the nation state is some homogenous group of individuals, which isn't really the case, especially in the United States. I mean, it's literally a country of all immigrants. We kind of massacred the people that lived here previously. Another point, the Republican point of view on this, and really the Democrats too, any neoliberal they're in favor of wide open, porous borders, complete free flow of capital all day long, right? Goods and services, billionaires moving money back and forth to hide from taxes. That's fine. But the problem is when the people try to move back and forth across borders to chase that money, to try and get better jobs and provide for their family, fleeing horrible conditions in countries like Ecuador. There are legitimate asylum seekers coming to this country that we are refusing to even treat like humans because it's a they. They're other. I'm sure they're not treating Canadian fucking illegals this way. I promise you.
No, definitely not. You know, like
we talked about this before, but the majority of overstayed visas are Canadians now, and the majority of legal immigrants are Chinese.
The lack of information given in segments that they do trying to inform people about the immigration process and the immigration issue we have in this country. It's just kind of astounding. Like I am sure you do. You know people. I know people that like this is on the right that this is a very important issue for them. And you can start asking them some of the stuff that I was talking about. They would have no clue about it. You know, they don't understand how the process works. They don't understand the difference between an immigrant and a refugee. They don't understand that, these people that are being bussed around, that they're not illegals, that
they take for granted also the fact that immigration of any kind is going to somehow hurt American workers, which is not necessarily the case. Not necessarily the case at all. If all the Haitians come to this country, then Levi Strauss isn't going to have too many workers for their factory paying 2 cents a day down there. I've said my piece on it.
Okay, yeah. And that was just, Tim, kind of being the dunce he is, laments our lack of nuance about this subject. Yet he only seems interested in talking about the incredibly low levels of crime, or the incredibly high levels of crime, drugs, etc., crossing over the border. And he talks about busing in the same breath as he talks about MS-13. It's just they're just scare stories, and that's kind of my whole point behind this. This is just it's a nonsense scare story. It's completely devoid of facts, and any of the things that people are worried about with these issues, if you spent a modicum of time, researching our policy, researching who these people are, why they're coming here, then it should be all of your fears should be kind of put to rest, because it's not the scary thing that people like Tim or Hannity would make it out to be.
I think there's a difference, too, between busing immigrants to cities that offer to take these immigrants in and what Governor Abbott did in Texas. I think he just kidnapped a bunch of Mexican families and shipped them halfway across the country, I think.
Well, no,
Not sure what the specifics were there.
They were willing, apparently. I don't know if they were actually immigrants or asylum seekers, but I was reading articles about this, and apparently they all were willing. That would have been crazy, though, if he just
that's what I was assuming.
Just sent out a bunch of cowboys to start lassoing Mexicans and throwing them on a Greyhound.
We should also just say, to clarify, Biden is not going to do shit. He's not done shit, really. He's talking about repealing Title 42, but is that even happening? Do you know?
He did end. They're supposed to end this month. So this is kind of why a lot of these stories started popping up. Yeah, I think in May 20-something, they're supposed to end all the Title 42 expulsions.
Well, that only took...
this is why they got back on the fear-mongering train.
That only took a year and a half.
These are, by the way, like we watched in the clip, these were things he was going to do on day one.
Yeah.
I wasn't great in math, but I think this is a little bit past that.
We're going to play On the Spectrum Revolutionaries Edition. I think the reason I like this game so much is because it gives me a lot of leeway to investigate characters you may not have heard of. So this will be interesting. I'm not sure how hard this is going to be. Maybe you know way more about history than I do, because most of these I didn't know that much about. I'll give you a few clues,
okay,
and then I want you to take a guess.
I'm guessing where they're at on the political spectrum.
Yeah, more or less. We're so young in this. Look.
This game is Tony's. On the spectrum.
Revolutionaries Edition on the Spectrum. All right. Let's start it off.
Oh, Biden's a revolutionary.
Yeah,
He'll
man.
be spoken about in the same vein as Che Guevara someday. Changing our immigration policy from the ground up on day one, James.
Build back better, baby. First up, Robert Mugabe. Controversial figure.
Yesterday, a couple of the American officials in the Kissinger party called what's been going on in Geneva a tribal dance. And they really don't feel that much progress will be made until the next set of meetings. How do you react to it?
Well, if it was a dance, it was a dance to our own tune, and not a dance to the Kissinger tune. And we are happy that if we have danced, we have remained constant. Our step has been always that there must be a transfer of power to the people of Zimbabwe as such, and not that there should remain effective power in the hands of the settler community, which is what Kissinger had intended should be achieved by Geneva.
Do you feel...
So Robert Mugabe here, he was an outspoken critic of the Rhodesian government. He served 10 years in prison for sedition.
Oh, goodness.
He led the Zimbabwe National African Union in a guerrilla war against the British colonial government of Rhodesia. Where is Robert Mugabe on the spectrum?
African politics tends to be fairly foreign to me, I guess. And this is my understanding, and also kind of foreign, very removed from the way our politics work here in the U.S. So I know over there, like, I guess tribalism literally is a lot more prevalent. You know, you do have homogenous groups, and that's where a lot of these political movements and big events have happened. They've been more basically on a tribal basis as opposed to kind of a left-right political dichotomy that we would know here in the U.S. So I'm trying to figure out how I would place Mugabe. I feel like I've heard his name. I don't exactly know who he is, but I feel like I've heard him referred to as a dictator. I am going to put him somewhere on. All right, we've got Joe Rogan's. You can put it right here. Joe Rogan's political spectrum, the compass that I said looked like a swastika. I'm going to put him.
Make strong men.
Yeah, he's on the hard times make. I don't know. Jordan Peterson loves talking about hard men. That's all I know. I'm going to put him somewhere authoritarian left. I think he probably uses left populist talking points, but ultimately he's just concerned about kind of establishing his own dynasty. You know, maybe kind of like a Stalin figure.
That's somewhat accurate. Yeah, you're on the right track. I thought maybe this would be an easy one because he was mentioned in the Yarvin pieces we've been working on. This is Robert Mugabe on 60 Minutes in 2001. Quite the career this gentleman has had.
This is what's going on in the countryside today. These scenes were captured by a cameraman for British television. White-owned farms and their black farm workers' houses are being seized and destroyed in a government-sanctioned campaign of racial and political violence. 7 white farmers have been killed so far, and not even their dogs are being spared.
Damn, they're beating on people?
In the past year,
dogs.
A major slice of the white population is packed up and left the country.
That's even worse.
Thousands of well-educated, middle-class blacks are doing the same thing. In the once prosperous capital of Harare, there are shortages of food and fuel. And in Parliament, a resolution has been introduced to impeach Robert Mugabe.
Impeach Robert Mugabe? No. So he was quite an interesting figure, has a long history, long career. He was, I should say, a Maoist and black nationalist. His policies while he was early on in his presidency were mostly social democratic policies. He didn't go too hard in the paint, as they say. He didn't go full Mao, but he was a Maoist, and his rival party in the early days was the Stalinist party. There were two Marxist-Leninist parties sort of battling it out, and Mugabe headed the Maoist one, which is, like, even 2001 here, he sort of did the whole Cultural Revolution thing a bit with this basically land redistribution again. He was taking even more land away from the whites that remained in Zimbabwe and was giving it to the blacks, essentially, or at least his supporters.
Hard out there for a white man.
I know, man. This is what they're talking about. The anti-white racism.
Yeah, no, this is it enacted.
They would be propping him up these days just for political purposes.
Oh, yeah. Could you imagine a guy like this? I mean, the scare value that they would get. Jesus.
The Daily Wire would do a daily show on this.
I'm surprised they're not already. So he's not in power anymore, I'm assuming?
I believe it was like 2011 or something. He finally was ousted in his 90s.
Yeah.
But he was fairly popular in the global South. He was head of the African National Congress for a long-ass time. You know, he was a left figure that people respected. He did some pretty unpopular shit too, obviously. And he was definitely not in favor in the good graces of the Western powers at any point.
Yeah, I'm just imagining a scenario where, like, I'm sure we give foreign aid to all these different countries and kind of how they would use that for political purposes if Biden were somebody doing it. You know, we give our regular annual aid package to his country, and the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro, Temple, Sean Hannity all just get up in arms about how Biden's supporting anti-white groups kind of across Africa, and he's arming his militia of African men to come over here and take over the country along with the Mexicans. I don't know, something like that.
Well, they sanctioned Zimbabwe after, I'm not sure when these sanctions started, probably 2001, but I'm sure the CIA was also not assassinating him, so, they didn't hate him too badly.
There's always that.
All right. Got that one right, pretty much. Let's move along here. This gentleman, this is a deep cut, but there is a possibility you've heard of this gentleman. This is Jose Anselmo dos Santos. He was a member of the Brazilian Navy and became the president of a naval union in Brazil. He rose to prominence when he led demonstrations for workers' rights. He was exiled from the country after the 1964 coup d'etat, only later to return as an active member of the VPR, or the People's Revolutionary Vanguard. In 2012, Cabo Anselmo, as he is known, was featured in a piece by the magazine Epoca, based on one of his speaking appearances. Quoting from the article here, "If your mind is not in accord with your heart, if you fail to be in the presence of the Creator, you run out of brakes. This is what happened, for example, when Darwin arrived with the theory of evolution. Pavlov, Freud, Lenin, and all that gang in the early 1900s made atheism become in force, and there was a separation between church and state, which had already begun with the French Revolution." This is translated directly from Portuguese, so not the best.
Okay.
In Brazil, the case is even more serious, in my opinion. Only 17% of people are able to maintain a critical spirit and escape the attacks that come from television, music, radio, newspaper advertisements. What opinion makers say, those beautiful statements that artists make, or what the advertisers say. And here is a photo from him around the time he was giving talks. This was, 2012, early 2000s, basically. 2010s, early 2010s. So Cabo Anselmo, where would you put him on the spectrum?
All right. Well, first off, I'm looking at the sweater. I'm looking at the part in the hair, and I feel like initially I was looking at him, and I'm thinking like he looks like kind of an older, maybe respected, like a college professor, a leftist. He's the one that you could go to and you can talk about. He's read Lenin's book, and he can give you. He's not a Leninist, but he can tell you about it. He's an educated man, certainly left-leaning. But then you started talking about. He referred to Darwin and Pavlov and Freud, and he kind of seemed to be talking about him with disdain, and the French Revolution, and seemed to lament the loss of religiosity, and maybe the cultural dependence on radio and kind of new media sources. And that leads me just to one place, and that's angry old right-wingers. And then I start looking at him some more. I'm like, that sweater's definitely a right-winger sweater. It's got the diamonds to represent money. The hair part, I think, is really what gives it away. But anyway, so I am going to say he is very socially conservative. I think he's just kind of a roundabout conservative with an emphasis on the social conservatism.
All this has been stolen by the filthy Jews.
That wasn't him. That was Bobby Fischer. But he almost looks like Saruman in this photo, doesn't he? He's got the squinting eyes.
A bit. Maybe it's just the really white hair.
And the white beard, yeah. Well, anyway, Cabo Anselmo is a very well-known figure in Latin America, especially in Brazil, but they all know who this guy is. Cabo Anselmo is concerned about the current situation in Brazil. We have a communist constitution. For him, the country's main problem today is the national security of great powers, such as the United States and Russia. Silence among the early children of the Cold War. We have to keep dancing samba, applauding football, consuming funks, rock from Sao Paulo, going to that naked guitarist concert, smoking marijuana, snorting cocaine to stay calm, and drinking fluoridated water.
You definitely don't snort cocaine to stay calm. He started to get rowdy, so he hasn't done drugs. I'm feeling stronger on the social conservatism.
You have Wi-Fi, electromagnetic waves that go through your head like you're thinking about without even being aware of it. That's used on television. That's used on radio. That's used on big TV shows. It's advanced technology being used absurdly. When you pass one of those cell towers, you're exposed to electromagnetic waves. They could be giving you commands. So Cabo Anselmo was an agent provocateur from the very beginning. This was confirmed by U.S. declassified documentation. He traveled to Cuba at one point after the initial coup, where he received guerrilla training. When he returned to Brazil in 1970, he infiltrated the VPR, the Revolutionary Vanguard People's Party. The whole time he was doing this, he was a double agent for the Brazilian dictatorship, who the United States had installed after they successfully couped the Social Democratic president, João Goulart. 3 years later, he set up 6 of his comrades. One of the 6 who were tortured and executed was Soledad Viedma. Nice photo of her here.
Huh.
She was 28 years old and the granddaughter of the anarchist author Rafael Barrett. At 17 years of age, she had been kidnapped by neo-Nazis who carved swastikas into her thighs. And she was also Cabo Anselmo's wife and was pregnant with his child when he set her up and had her tortured and killed.
Holy shit. What a dirtbag.
Yes, indeed. This guy was a piece of work.
Jesus.
So from the very beginning, early in his naval career, he was working for the intelligence services, the Western intelligence services, essentially.
Yeah.
He set up over 200 people in total, members of the VPR, including his own wife. Pretty disgusting.
Jesus, what a scumbag.
Yeah.
And
Cabo Anselmo.
He was an agent provocateur for the U.S. government.
He worked for the Brazilian dictatorship, who worked for the U.S. government. And he also went to Cuba on assignment. So presumably, yes. Basically, yes.
Huh.
He wasn't directly employed by the CIA, most likely, but, he was following their orders for sure.
Yeah. Wow, holy shit.
Yeah, just remember that name, Cabo Anselmo. Very, very hated individual in Latin America. Let's see, how many? We have 2 left here. I don't have too many this week.
Okay.
But these are deep cuts. I thought maybe this would be somewhat difficult. But yeah, you got it pretty right. He's definitely conservative. He's also insane. He's like a Facebook person, basically. He just buys all the conspiracy theories.
Yeah, so he's kind of using the same approach as U.S. conservatives. You go after the culture war stuff, and I guess this is kind of more relevant culture war down there than it is here. Kind of strong bent towards religiosity and dislike of punk music and that sweet calming cocaine.
All right, let's move right along. There's more to the story of Cabo Anselmo, but we should move along.
This is the dude from Kill Bill?
No, this is this is a movie with a much lower production budget. This is Hong Xiaoquan. Hong Xiaoquan here was a Han Chinese from Guangzhou in the southern Guangdong region of China. His family sacrificed much to provide the funding for him to get a higher education, as he was an intelligent and gifted youth. He failed the very difficult entrance exam for entrance to the political bureaucracy in China at the time 3 times, and he also led an uprising against the Manchu-ruled Qing dynasty beginning in 1850. He had as many as 2 million soldiers under his command at the height of the revolution against the Qing dynasty. Where is Hong Xiaoquan on the spectrum?
Huh. All right.
Not a lot to go off of there, I know.
So I have watched an extensive number of kung fu movies, so I feel like I have a pretty good grounding in Chinese history. I always liked the Dynasty Warriors games, and that's also where I get all my history lessons from. But I feel like the Han Chinese were ethnic Mongolians, if I'm remembering right, and I very well could be wrong. And he was fighting against the wealthier Manchu Chinese that were kind of in the south and eastern part. So he's a poor fellow coming from a tribal background, leading an uprising. I don't know. I'm really getting kind of a Simon Bolivar vibes from this guy. He might be the real deal. He's this proud lefty, or that kind of version of lefty, or I guess that century's version of lefty that tried to make his way through the tough, bigoted establishment of the Manchu Chinese and wasn't accepted into their culture. So he ended up leading an uprising of his fellow disaffected against the tyranny of the Chinese emperorship. So yeah, I'm going, he's whatever Simon Bolivar is, that's what he is.
It's pretty good, man.
He's a man of the people. He's honest to God. He's out there looking out for the poor and disaffected of society.
That's pretty good. I'm actually impressed. That's pretty spot on, man. I think it's a good comparison. I never really thought to compare him to Simon Bolivar, but yeah, it's similar sort of vein. I guess you could look at it as an anti-imperialist action for sure. Who knows if he was cynical about this whole thing or not. I guess we can determine that after we get a little more information on this gentleman, but...
There's the throne of the heavenly king. Once God's kingdom here on earth had been established in
Tony Blair.
A blizzard of ideas pouring from this throne. They had printing presses here. They had a whole workshop for woodblock cutting for their publications, their translations of the Old and New Testament.
That throne, man.
They banned opium, tobacco, alcohol, foot binding, prostitution,
craftsmanship.
gambling. They separated the sexes. There was the death penalty for sex between men. Most important of all, China was to be classless. Private ownership of property, private ownership of land were abolished by the state and distributed by the state.
Pretty groundbreaking for 1850.
Yeah.
The whole murdering gay people, not so great. But the banning foot binding, that's pretty good.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know about the whole banning opium thing. I'm not a fan of that.
No,
he didn't necessarily ban it. He blocked the import and export of it. I don't think he actually banned it explicitly.
Okay. I mean, well, essentially that's just banning the export because, like, that's where all the opium come from. So yeah, keep it all for yourself, buddy. That's what I'm saying. Don't let those damn British come get all your sweet, sweet opium.
A little more info about this. This is fascinating to me. The history of China. Hong Xiuquan suffered a mental breakdown after failing the test the fourth time. I'm sorry, this was the third time. So this was before the revolution. During this after the third failure, he had a mental breakdown where he spoke to a heavenly figure who gave him a sword to defeat the demons in his vision. After failing the test a fourth time, he proclaimed that the figure he had seen in his visions was God and that he was the brother of Jesus Christ. He had been given this information, and he set out to fulfill his mission. After defending the heavenly kingdom several times, this was the kingdom he established with his revolution, which was very successful for a number of years and got very large, as we discussed, 2 million people at one time, 2 million soldiers at one time fighting for him. And they conquered a lot of southeastern China. After defending the heavenly kingdom, which is what his jurisdiction was called, several times, the Qing dynasty forces, led by European generals and with the backing of the wealthy elites, surrounded and starved out the Han ruler. He died as the city of Tianjin was surrounded, perhaps by suicide, perhaps from eating wild grasses for survival. It's unclear how he died. Maybe he poisoned himself, there's speculation, or it could have just been he ate some poisonous plants to survive as the city was under siege. The final death toll after the final resistance groups were wiped out is estimated at between 20 million and 100 million, many from disease and famine. So this was the total number of deaths resulting from this war on the heavenly kingdom that he had established. They crushed all the resistance. They even went into different countries in Southeast Asia to root out the remaining followers of this guy, Hong Xiuquan. He outlawed polygamy, but he himself is reported to have had 88 wives because, brother of Jesus and all.
Yeah, of course.
So, cool story.
Yeah, I have heard of this guy before, and now that you start mentioning that, like I've heard this story before, and yeah, he's certainly a bit more of the religious nut than I was picking up initially, which kind of also makes sense though, and that's a good something to think about. Like, would it be better to not have, assuming that, let's say, good come of it, and obviously it didn't. Everybody starved, or everybody got killed by the Western-backed imperial forces. But would it be better to not have a revolution, or to have a revolution that helped people, but you have a religious nut at the head, and the reasons that are kind of behind what's going on, like the stated purpose of the revolution, are these kind of purely religious notions and not just that it's something that needs to be done?
Well, you're coming at this from the position that religion is poison. It poisons everything. Wasn't that the title of one of Hitchens' books? Religion poisons everything, or something like that?
Yeah. God is not great. How religion poisons everything.
Oh, there you go. I would probably say that the whole Jesus brother thing was orchestrated after he realized he wasn't going to make it in the political bureaucracy, and he decided to take matters into his own hands, probably realizing that the peasantry would be most convinced if he was some sort of religious figure based on the sentiment at the time. That's what I would say.
I wonder if maybe he was appealing to Western forces with that, like maybe in his understanding of kind of how Europe is aligned. These are all Christian nations, so if I align myself heavily with Christianity, maybe I'll get their support in fighting against the Imperial Chinese. And what better way to align yourself with Christians than to say you're the brother of Jesus?
Well, see, now you're ruining my whole. He's supposed to be a pure revolutionary in my mind. He's one of the good ones, Tony. You're ruining it.
Oh,
don't make him a conspirator with the West.
I think that's what he's the same agent provocateur as the last guy, James. I'm sorry to tell you.
No.
It's just it's purely cynical.
Do not compare Cabo Anselmo to Hong Xiaoquan.
he was hoping for. He was hoping to be the Elon Musk of his time, and he wanted to just get some shares in the East India Trading Company.
Oh, he gave the people land, Tony. Land, just like Mugabe.
He bought votes, just like Biden.
Just like Brandon.
Just like Brandon.
So this next one, I feel like you may know this one, but I guess we can go through it because it's very interesting. So this is Gordon Call. He was a decorated turret gunner who served for the U.S. during World War II. He served 8 months on a 2-year sentence in 1972. And he was active in an organization that attempted to organize farmers during the agricultural recession of the 1980s. Gordon Call, where is he at on the spectrum?
Well, I immediately noticed he has an International Harvester hat on. I was going to point that out, but you said he was a farmer, so that's pretty obvious.
Well, now I know that, so that's good.
Yeah, that's an International Harvester hat. I know about the during the inflation crisis during that time, the Fed raised rates, putting a lot of farmers out of business. They weren't able to make the mortgage payments on their farm. They weren't able to pay for their equipment. I know that these guys really got up in arms, and at one point in time, they drove their tractors to Washington, D.C. to protest.
That would take a while.
It would. I have a tractor. It is not very fast. I think 20 miles an hour tops. I don't know. I'm trying to think if, I guess by then, the conservative forces in the U.S. had a very... Hang on. I got a question to ask.
Sure.
What year was this that he was doing this, like specifically?
The revolution?
Yeah.
Early 1980s, so 81, 82, 83.
Okay.
In that range, I will give you.
Okay. All right. So this is when Ronald Reagan was president, early in Reagan's presidency. Say the revolution. I am leaning towards this guy as basically somebody that doesn't. I don't know. Actually, I'm kind of going the other. I'm really back and forth. I was initially thinking like this was a What was the dude that did the standoff a few years ago? Bundy. Bundy Ranch. Well, Clive and Bundy. I was initially thinking that this guy was. I was kind of going down that route. That he was a Clive and Bundy type. That he was mad about government regulations that maybe were or changes in the interest rates that were messing with his farm and making it more difficult for his people. I don't know. I keep going back and forth. I'm going to say he is a conservative, anti-government protester. He was upset by changes made by the government to kind of fiscal policies or the Fed interest rates, and he was leading an uprising. He was tired of it, just like Clive and Bundy. He was tired of it, and he was going to make a stand against the Fed. And, he elected Ronald Reagan to get in there and change things, but it just wasn't happening. And he had to, he was going to make sure it did happen. You can't trust an actor from California. You got to only trust people from Nebraska with International Harvester hats on.
I don't know the Clive and Bundy case. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, he's a sovereign citizen.
Okay. So Gordon Call was a member of Posse Comitatus, a precursor to the sovereign citizen movement. Federal marshals set up a roadblock to arrest him for a parole violation, leaving a Posse Comitatus meeting, and a gunfight ensued. 2 marshals were killed, and another was injured. Call fled by himself. The people that were with him turned themselves in, basically turned themselves in, essentially. But Gordon Call fled, and a manhunt ensued for him. They eventually found where he was hiding at one of his buddies' houses. The feds surrounded Gordon Call's abandoned farmhouse in North Dakota. He was not there. He was in hiding. They unloaded hundreds of rounds of ammunition into his empty house and killed his dog. They eventually located him in a friend's house in Arkansas. State, local, and federal police arrived. The sheriff went in with two other people that were there at the time. The sheriff saw Gordon Call, got into a gunfight with him. They both shot simultaneously. Call was hit in the head, killing him instantly. The sheriff was hit in the chest, and he struggled his way back to his police car. The other two officers that were in the building, the state boy and the Fed, they were already on the scene. They started randomly firing their shotguns after they heard the exchange between Gordon Call and the sheriff.
All cops are pussies. Yes.
One of the cops shot the sheriff in the chest with a shotgun, friendly fire style.
Oh, Jesus.
The three officers retreated, where the sheriff gasped his last breath, supposedly. I got him. Then the SWAT team waiting outside fired thousands of rounds into the house and then poured diesel fuel down the chimney and burned the house down.
Jesus. Holy shit.
They're going to punish the house for Gordon Call killing the sheriffs.
Wow, holy shit. Yeah, they went all out on that one.
This is a crazy story too. The initial exchange was pretty intense. They've made 2 movies, I think, about this particular case. The standoff between the sheriffs serving him for the parole violation.
I guarantee if you go to Cliven Bundy's house, this was on his recently watched Netflix. Like he probably watches this.
Was that after? Was Cliven Bundy after this?
Cliven Bundy was like 10 years ago.
Oh,
7, 8
really?
years ago.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So this is his son.
Northeast Arkansas is
his
usually
friend's
a quiet
son,
place.
I think.
Shootouts, tax protesters, and fugitives
where he was hiding.
Just never have been the source of much talk around here. That is, not until this past weekend. Picking up the pieces. That's what everyone seems to be doing. While the local sheriff was being buried, the family of the last 2 people he arrested was trying to figure out what had happened. And if one of the first 2 shots killed the man the police wanted, they wondered why the house was set afire. The people who hid Gordon Call in this house think the authorities aren't telling the whole story.
Looked like a dang disaster to me. Mess. Just overdid is what it is. From all accounts I heard so far, it's just excessive power.
Ryder's in-laws are in jail because they hid the man who killed Sheriff Gene Matthews. Larry and Norm.
I don't know if insurance covers that if the police just blow your house away and then burn it down.
Yeah, definitely not. I feel like I've heard about, not this case, but like that in particular happening. There was somebody that the cops went to the wrong house on a warrant and like ended up somehow or another the house caught on fire. It got destroyed and insurance wouldn't cover it and the police department wouldn't cover it because they consider it like, I don't know, just a whoopsie daisy, I guess. But yeah, the city would not pay for the cops having destroyed their house.
It's like that scene in The Patriot where one guy just randomly fires and then everybody starts firing. They just all shoot each other.
Yeah, stay tuned to see if that happens here at some point, based on what they did last time.
Well, apparently the initial the initial exchange where the 2 sheriffs were killed and the third was injured, it wasn't him that fired the first shot. According to the story, it was one of the other Posse Comitatus members with him, who I don't recall if they were related or not. I don't think they were. It was him and a man and a woman. I don't remember the exact details, but yeah, he didn't fire the first shot, but he basically responded and killed 2 of them, and then the third was injured, and he like took his gun and like talked shit to him while he was injured on the ground, and then took his police car and drove off, went on the run basically.
Oh, that's just gangster as hell.
That's an interesting story, man.
I'll have to check that one out.
Well, that's pretty much all I got for this week, man.
Cool. Yeah. Lessons learned. Don't mess with the most powerful gang in the U.S. The police force, not the MS-13. But all right. Well, I guess we are on again for this Sunday. Everything should be good to go. But I'll talk to you then, James.
Have a good one, man.
Peace.
Later on.
Are my methods unsound? I don't see.